excited. So many things to share. So excited to have you both here. Thank you so much for making the time. I know it was a little jostled to get your way here, but I really appreciate having you both here and for everything that you're going to share with everyone who's listening or watching. And maybe we'll start off with how I found you, if that's okay.
Of course. Sure.
Yeah.
First, I want to say thank you very much for having us.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're
Right?
so welcome.
Giving us a chance to, get our thoughts out there and share with people, because that's what we like to do. And that's our
what we're
number
here
one
for.
goal, is to help others on their journey. We're not going to tell you how to live your life and do your things, and we'll talk more about that later on, but we're so against being judgmental that, I think it's just always interesting to find other people that same way, right?
We're
Yes.
beacons. That's what we refer to ourselves as. Like, that's our mission, our twin flame mission, which again, we'll talk about later. But
Yeah, she's got a huge tattoo of a lighthouse on her
we're beacons.
light that shows that. And it's a pretty cool tattoo, and understanding why it's there and stuff. And, I was always a guy that was against tattoos, and I've learned so much on acceptance of tattoos and what they mean, Never thought of them as being someone's life story, and that type of
Yes.
thing, right? So,
Kind of like a map,
Yeah.
correct.
a history map.
But you should share how you found us and how we came together.
sorry.
For sure. Sorry.
I just wanted to make sure that let everyone know that.
Interject anytime. Please feel free to interrupt me, because I don't want to just, lead the show, so to speak. And yes, I appreciate your appreciation, because I love getting your message out as well. And like I said, I wanted to share how I found you, because in my process, I was on a search to find somebody who was local to me. And that first I find in the twin flame mission, we're going to talk about what twin flames are because we keep dropping that. But in the twin flame mission here, as you start to have more awareness about what that is, you go through this period of search, right? Like read, consume, confirmation. I need confirmation of this information, that other people are actually having this experience, because I feel like I'm losing my mind,
Validation.
right? And so I was like, there has to be, and not everyone, and part of the experience is finally admitting it. Right. And so, and not hiding that or keeping it a secret.
Right.
And so, because it's so hard to find people who actually will admit it.
Right.
Well, this whole journey, like, you have to think of the death of your past journey and being born into awakening, which twin flame is just a form. It's like a flavor of awakening journey, right? And there's a whole grief process you have to go through of letting go of that old life and accepting and bringing in and birthing your new life, the new you that is connected in a different way than ever before. And so those 5 stages of grief are really important, because I think we have moments of anger, right? What the fuck? Why is this happening to me? And then, there's the kind of, I forget what the stages are, bargaining, right? You go, oh my God, I just don't want this to be happening. Give me back my old life.
Denial.
Right? Denial. Thank you. That's the D word I was looking for. Right. And so I think it is important to find people, and again, we'll talk about empaths, like you and I were chatting about earlier, about how being an empath plays into all of that happening and learning and embodying and accepting and becoming on this journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So finding someone local as opposed to just on the internet and reading about it. And there is so much misinformation as well, and conflicting information. You have to kind of disseminate, like, who really is actually, proficient in this process, right? And so finding the two of you, I'm located in Portland, Oregon. You're in Beaverton, which is like 15-minute drive. I was so excited to find you because the two of you are fully committed to this, right? And so that was really exciting. I found you, I reached out to you, and then you actually have a weekly group that helps others through their own process as well. And so let's first talk about, because we keep dropping the name, for anyone who's listening, because I know it's very difficult to also describe, but what is a twin flame? Can we start there? And I can help too. Don't get me wrong.
Oh,
I'm
no,
not
you don't
putting
need
it
to
all on
help.
you.
We know exactly what it is.
Okay, good.
Right. So a twin flame is one soul that, for purposes of achieving a greater mission in this life than could be achieved by one body alone, that soul chooses to copy into two bodies. Notice I say copy, not cut itself in parts and put half in one and half in the other. We each carry a full copy of our shared soul. And then, the whole purpose of that is to experience an awful lot of trauma, learn a lot of things, and become the people in 3D that matches that 5D soul who can help others find their ideal path and way forward. And it's not even that we help people, right? We just sort of share our story. That's what we're here for, is to be beacons and say, look, this is how we see it and what's happened for us. If you recognize something, feel free to keep listening. If you don't recognize something or resonate, that's okay too, because we know everybody has a different experience. So what would you say?
I think, the huge understanding is knowing that every set of twin flames is different than the others that are out there. So no one's story is going to be the exact same because we're all on different missions. We've all decided to come here on our journey to experience something that's going to get us into the next phase of what comes next after this life, things like that, we talk about a lot of doors being open as you walk through this journey and stuff, and keys that need to be found and things. So, it makes sense to us. It might not make sense to everyone at first either, but again, that's that time where you're searching on what a twin flame is and stuff. And you mentioned earlier, there's so many people out there with their take on it and stuff. And I think the important thing to remember is all our experiences are going to be different. There's some checklists that you can look at and go, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. Is this what it is? And things like that. But
there's some stages, right?
Exactly.
We can talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So. But that's what a twin flame is, if you just want a definition. One soul copied into two bodies for the purpose of achieving a greater mission than can be done in one body alone, in this world, in this lifetime, on this journey.
I agree. And I also would add in that it's you. A twin flame is you.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You're too.
Yeah. What we always say is, he is me, I am him, or she is me, I am her. We are one. That's kind of, when people start asking a bunch of questions, we're like, okay, just think about it this way. That's me sitting right there.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in two places at once, and we're just this wider net cast out into the world to learn and bring in the trauma and understand and transmute the trauma like we were talking about earlier, so that we have a broader breadth of and depth of experience between the two of us who could walk two paths that go, in and out and meet together and then eventually totally converge, right? So I think that's an excellent point, Andrea. You're right.
Thanks. I must be figuring something out. Okay. So what, you kind of touched on this. What is the purpose of a twin flame relationship?
To be that broader antenna. We're all part of the same source. It's just how attuned we are to hearing and seeing and feeling how we are both part of the source and separate like nodes on the whole fabric of the source, right? And so the purpose of having like two super tuned antennas the way that we are is because if you choose to be on the twin flame journey, you just are going to have all those extra gifts, whether you recognize and use them and employ them like consciously, or whether they're just working in the background is another question, because we work differently in that way.
Sure.
But we're like these two antennas. It's an array rather than just one. And so if you put all of that, those receptors out there, and that bigger receptor than if you're in one body, you can see how you gather more experience, you get more radio waves in, and you kind of can synthesize more so that you can help other people, find the same way. It's like you kind of volunteer to do something for the collective. If you're going to be a twin flame, there's a bigger journey than just what you're trying to learn to elevate your own soul. It's because you're trying to elevate everything so that everybody can get to a higher level and a higher plane.
Yes, and I would add that it's like a spiritual awakening. It's a connection. It's not a romantic relationship, although it can be. It can be, but it isn't always, right?
Yep.
Not always.
Not always. Yours is. Obviously.
Right.
Yeah. So when did you realize that the idea you have about love for your twin flame is not about physical union or romance, such as we find here in third dimension, but about union with yourself or choosing yourself over and over again?
Wow, you should answer that first. When did we realize?
Yeah. When did you realize that?
Well, to answer that question cleanly for us, you have to kind of start a little bit before where that answer comes in. So I don't know how far we can give a brief overview for those who don't know or haven't heard of us.
Yeah.
We were both married to soulmates when we met. We met on Ashley Madison, the cheating website. And a lot of people will hear us say that and just immediately, right, the judgments come in and like, well, you were married and you were committed and you made vows before God. All of that comes into the twin flame journey.
Yes.
But we were both married. We found each other. And I have to say, like the first chapter of the first book, because we write a book series, it's a fictionalized memoir of our journey to each other. In the very first chapter of the very first book, I talk about our first meeting at a Red Robin for lunch. And it started out as any ordinary day when I was in my cheating days, because I was cheating with whoever I could find to cheat with, because I was trying to find something I felt. Like I was so dead to everything. I was 39 years old, and I was just a zombie, the walking dead. Like I didn't know what love was. I didn't believe love even existed. I could never feel it for myself. I hated myself. And
I did in my 30s as well.
it just makes me feel so sad for that old me, even though I would not trade any of that, right? It is who I am. I had to go through that in order to become this thing that I am sitting here today sharing this story. So I walked into that Red Robin, and it was like I was on a conveyor belt. Even before I walked into the Red Robin, getting out of the car, going back to driving to the restaurant, I snapped a picture of myself driving down into the tunnel on 26. And I look back, it was taken at 11 a.m. that day, which I didn't know about. I didn't know any of, I was just dead to everything on a spiritual level, a mental, emotional. I had completely shut down because I had chosen the life that wasn't where I was really meant to be going. And it was coming to an end and dying. And I had to break out of it, the chrysalis, and go to what was new. Took that picture. It was like I was on a conveyor belt. I got there. I felt like I was on a conveyor belt past the hostess going in. And there was this light shining down, this cone of light shining down from the ceiling. And I was like, he's there. That's where he is. And I just went there, and it was almost like everything had been scripted, even though we only talked about like mundane things like how an affair would work, if we were to have an affair, what we were looking for. I mean, all these things that if you're a cheater, you'll recognize you would do. Like you have this list because you're like, okay, I don't want to get caught. I don't want to end my own life. My spouse doesn't deserve it. I hate myself for doing this. I've got to find someone who's not going to expose me and not expect anything. All these things. And it was like we were going through this script, but the whole time, it had happened 1,000 times before, 1,000,000 times before. And we finish and we go outside, and Justin says, do you want to go somewhere and kiss? And I hated kissing. Kissing to me was a chore. I didn't like swapping spit with other people, even though it's what you did.
Intimate.
It's extremely intimate, right? And I didn't even realize that at the time that would be why. I was just like, I'm not a kisser. Well, in his profile, one of the things he was interested in was the intimacy and the kissing and the touching. And from that, I was like, this guy's not going to work. But he said, do you want to go kiss? And so we went. I was like, where are we going to go that people aren't going to stare at us? Because we were over by the airport at that Red Robin. And I said, IKEA parking lot? And he goes, sure. So we both we hopped in our cars and drove over there, and he got in my car, and our lips met. And the way I describe it is, it's like if the world was always built like this, the earth, if you're listening, I'm making like a ball, the earth with a globe with my hands, and it came apart at the hemisphere, and it like went, and it went back together. And I felt that in that moment, our lips touched, and it was like a giant shock. In 3D, it was like being an electric shock. We kind of went back from each other, and Justin goes, "What was that?" And I was so shocked because I said, "You felt it too?"
You're like, "Wait a minute. That wasn't just in my mind?"
Yeah. I go, "You felt it too?" And he said, "Yes." And it was like we couldn't get our lips back together fast enough. So that was my like lightning strike moment. But did I know or understand? Nope. No. But that's when our soul knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think on my side of things, I had no expectations of what would happen in our first meeting. And so I was sitting there. The minute she walked in, I saw her, and I was like, it was an instant identification of someone I knew already. I didn't have to question who she was or try to figure out and try to get to know her and stuff. It was just in my mind, it was like, I know her from somewhere. Where? And it didn't make any sense. And, and like she said, we sat there, I remember we talked, and, everything matched. Like, this is what I need. I can't have anybody that's going to, expose me to anything. I'm married. I'm not looking for anything. I'm just looking for this connection that I was on this journey that I started of, there's got to be more to life. What is this thing? What am I seeking? What am I needing? And just like her, I was in the middle of all kinds of stuff, trying to identify who I was, and it was really searching, and I tried to find it in other things throughout my whole life. And it just got to that point where I was out searching, and again, cheating, trying to expose myself to whatever I could to find out what these feelings I was searching for and what this path was leading me to. And then it all became to this one day and this one moment that's been identified, And again, it was the moment that we met. It wasn't even the kiss that happened later on. It was the minute that I saw her and physically looked into her eyes and saw the universe, and stars, things like that. And it's all the stuff that you read in books and see in movies that doesn't happen in real life.
And you're like, whatever, that's not real. That's like movies. That's
right. Exactly. And so I was like, okay, and I wasn't sure it was going to last, because anybody that I had been seen or been with, maybe lasted 2 or 3 times, before I moved on, right? That it just became old, and it wasn't what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And again, I needed that connection emotionally. I knew that that's what I needed. Whatever I was searching for was something more than I had with my spouse at the time, my soulmate, and best friend. Even to this day, we're still best friends, which is pretty cool. And how she fits into this journey is something that, we've stumbled upon throughout our journey and stuff, that she was there for both of us, actually.
Instrumental.
Yeah.
And stuff. But that moment, going back to that kiss, yes, the kiss was something that, again, you would read in a book or see in a movie. And so, a lot of people like to say, well, that's why it's based on a lie. It's not real, and it's like, and it's so hard to explain to people how real it is, because it's not something I've experienced with anyone else ever, and stuff. And so, that's why I know in my heart where we are and how we got there, and the feelings and the emotions that we both have, even down to the point where, it's funny because when we're, close to each other or can't keep our hand, I mean, when we sit together, we're always sitting with our hands held. I can't be separated from her when I'm around her. It's hard to go to work. So, I mean, there's so much that's tied into this twin flame thing that it's like, that's how you know that she is me and I am her and all that, because it's like you can't live without that touch and that sense.
And if you go back to that first moment, it's like
It all started
it
there.
ignited there. We never
Exactly.
could have identified, like we're way further down the path, obviously now, and that's why we're there. But
I think one of the biggest things was I always noticed is people smell. So, people smell.
They do.
Problem is, she doesn't smell to me. I mean, I can like smell her skin and know that it's familiar. It's like my own skin. It's my own smell. It's my own scent. It's like, there's nothing like it, that matches it. Because, everyone else does have a smell.
Yes.
Do you remember that day? Do you remember that day when you grabbed my arm? We'd had sex and we were at his home, and I don't know, we'd been together. We'd been seeing each other. It was after my suicide attempt. I think we were back together, and you grabbed my arm, and he just like inhaled me everywhere, and I was like, oh, I must smell, right? I must stink. And he was like, why don't you have a smell to me? And it was like he was frustrated, and he was like demanding an answer, and I was like, you don't smell to me either. And I had, until that moment, I had never thought about it, never anything. But you see, this is what we're talking about. Like we have these two experiences, and then something comes to the attention of one. And all of a sudden it's like all of the understanding is there.
It's instant understanding for both of you.
Right. And we were still confused and in the matrix at that point. So we were like, we didn't know why that would be. I was just like, and I said something scientific, like, well, we must have really close DNA or something, and
pheromones.
we just don't. Pheromones,
just really attracted to each other's pheromones,
right? But that wasn't. It's not it. It's not it. We still don't smell.
So one of the other clues was at the time I had a dog, and Sissy was her name, and I tell you, anybody that came to the door, she would just holler and bark and just go nuts, until she got to see him. The first time Michelle came over to the house, it was like Sissy knew her already. And so that was another moment where, even after the part of...
You're like, what is going on?
Exactly. It never dawned on me until, after the relationship had been going on for a while. Every time she'd come over, it was like Sissy just knew her. It was like, and that's how I knew. It was like, she's me.
This is so different.
Sissy's identifying us as being the same person, even to an animal, which was crazy. It was like... Because this dog would just go nuts and berserk if you were someone new and she wanted to get to know you and blah, blah, blah. But it was like, she'd already knew Michelle.
So, question for you. Did both of you have an understanding or awareness or longing from as far back as you can remember? I mean, I know I did. Of being, for lack of better description, incomplete.
Alone.
Yes.
I was like, I know.
I know there's someone out there for me.
I mean, when I was little, I drove my mom crazy. She'd call me chatterbox, right? Because I was constantly talking to someone, and it was my boy. And I'd tell my mom, well, it's my boy. And she's like, there's not a boy in your room. No, he's right here next to me, for years, until finally it like wore me down so much. Well, and also I had a very traumatic moment. A sexual trauma where a family friend tried to rape me. And like, I know now that that's the moment I switched off, like knowing that he was there with me all the time. But I always wondered. And then I felt alone from that moment on. And that contributed to my eventual midlife crisis that we were describing a few moments ago, right? But it was that fact of knowing that someone who belongs here is not here, and it's not my mom, and it's not my boyfriend, and it's not anybody else. It's not my dog.
Where is this person?
And it's still not my spouse, my soulmate, who I found. He didn't fit, but I was like, well, I'm this thing I'm searching for is a figment of my imagination, so I'm going to take what's
presented to me,
and I'm going to make this bargain of that's the best thing for me, and I'm going to take that, right? But it didn't feel, and I convinced myself I was believing in a
fairy tale.
A fairy tale. Thank you. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a poem about it in 1994, and he was 9. Right? I mean, I have it printed. At the time, it was so important to me. My mom thought I was bananas. I think I was 20. I was 20, maybe. Must have been 20. And
you're 11 years apart. Go ahead.
Yeah. We were 11 years apart. And she thought I was bananas. She's like, I was a writer, and she was like, why is this? I had it printed on like special paper and mounted and framed. And she's like, why is this so important? It's called The One. And I mean, I was brokenhearted at the time because of a relationship that I had just gotten out of. Don't get me wrong, which I think is, part of the karmic evolution, but of how we ended up meeting each other finally. But the point is it wasn't about him. And I knew that at the time. But I mean, I grew up, and my mom used to tell me, it's funny, our moms see things in us, right? My mom used to tell me, you're special, you're special, you're special when I was a kid. And like looking back on that as an adult, I used to think, okay, well, she, as a covert narcissist, she just was like leeching off of my energy, right? Which she was. And maybe that's why she saw she was special. But it hasn't been until recently that I really recognized what she was actually saying to me, right? It was unusual compared to my two other siblings. And I was constantly on a search. I mean, my dad told me in my teen years, he was like, Andrea, let the boys chase you. I was on a mission to find this person. I was like, where are they? And I had been so impatient about it my entire life, because when people present themselves to me, I'm like, no, you're not them. You're not them. And I got into a karmic relationship for 22 years trying to make it them. And I did everything I could to try and make that relationship work. Yep.
For anybody who thinks this easy, it's not, including dealing with those things that Andrea is talking about right now, those connections that you've forged heretofore in your journey on this timeline. Like, that all has to be dealt with. And it's you
painful.
Try and keep shoving that square peg in that round hole, because you're like, I know if I let this not fit, then where do I go from here? And so I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make this person this thing. And that's just part of the journey, to learn that that's not it.
Yeah.
And they're not it.
No, so not it. Catalyst, if anything, but so not it.
Right.
Okay, so how rare are twin flames? In your opinion?
I don't know. I think they're kind of, it's hard to say rare, because again, it's something that's decided in the 5D realm and stuff before you get here. So it's really a choice that you make before you come to Earth to live out this journey that we're on. And we know there are those that choose not to split their soul and come here to try and do everything on their own. Or maybe this is a journey where they don't need two separate bodies to get whatever they're trying to achieve done. So I don't know. I don't know what a good answer is for that.
I think that the longer we've been on this journey, what we've come to realize is maybe we're sort of the vanguard, because there's something changing. I think the Earth is evolving. We feel it, we see it. There's climate change, which we, to some degree or not, depending on, I don't want to get into political stuff, whether you believe in climate, the causes of climate change, there is climate change happening. The Earth is changing. It's happened in the past. There have been extinction level events. I think twin flames are starting up to show up more now, and to achieve some level of understanding and get far enough through the journey to where we can be a voice to say, hey, there is something beyond this. Don't panic. Don't worry. We're all going to be okay. Everything changes, and this is happening for a reason. And so I think there's sort of this vanguard. The term twin flame, if you look back, Dolores Cannon talked about it back in the 70s, right? Mm-hmm. She mentioned it in some of her lectures, or whatever you want to call them. They were downloads. They were channels, right? It was all channeling. And so, I think there were certain people who spoke up and set the expectation, and then some of us started arriving, and it's a really fucking hard journey, right? So you're going to have a fallout rate. If there's 100 twin flame souls, pair souls that have decided to incarnate in these two bodies in this lifetime, I don't know, right now, maybe 5 of them even come close to being in 3D union in order to do that thing that you're talking about at the beginning, Andrea, of finding each other, not only on the internet and virtually, which is really super important, but also in person and building this net around the world, because we're like a network of these little nodes of light that need to connect. And that's what we say when we mean when we say bring the light.
It's a grid.
Right. And we're beacons, right?
Yeah.
So we're lights. And the twin flame tattoo, there's a funny story about this one. Justin mentioned my tattoos earlier. But yeah, I think that they feel rare right now because maybe, just like the first wave of soldiers in battle, it's a hard journey to choose.
Well, it's also not everyone.
No.
No, it's not everyone.
Because there are certain lessons attached to this experience that you need the 2 bodies and the 2 experiences for. And you don't need that in every evolution of your soul. Every time you incarnate, you've got different things you're working on, different lessons, different everything.
Yes.
And you don't always need to be a twin flame because that adds a whole other layer of complexity to everything.
It does.
Right?
Yes, it does.
So I'm not saying we're special, haha, but we are.
But in some ways we are because we have to be an old soul in order to do this. And in some ways I believe, or I feel like I have a knowing that this potentially is our last incarnation. I feel like in some ways this could be our last incarnation because this is not creme de la creme, but this is kind of like what we were trying to accomplish in all of the evolutions previous, right? And like this is creating union between 2 souls it is no small feat.
Nope.
It is really, we're going to get into that. We've gotten into 5 questions. So
sorry. Yeah. Oh my gosh. What's the time? Oh my gosh.
We can talk as long as we want. I don't care if this is 4 hours long. I just, the other people are just going to have to listen. So, okay. So I feel like, there's conflicting information, but I do feel like in some ways we are rare, right? It's not every single person that is doing this for sure.
Right.
How many times do you want to beat your head against the cement wall? That's the criteria for deciding to be before we incarnate. That's part of the criteria. Well, we're going to do it.
You're making it sound so glamorous.
There are huge rewards, too.
Do you feel that the twin flame journey is being highly accelerated in 2023? And why is that?
One of the downloads that we've been talking about on our Wednesday support group for awakening people, it's called Warriors Weekly. And it's not exclusive to twin flames, by the way. It's anybody on any journey, any spiritual awakening journey. Even if you're just like questioning, you're like, okay, my life is fucked up and I don't know why. And I need something.
Does anybody else feel the same?
Religion,
right? Like religion hasn't worked. Maybe ignoring it hasn't worked. Sex, drugs, whatever haven't worked because we did all those right till we found each other and found the spiritual journey through it. It's like we have this group on Wednesdays, and one of the things we've been talking about since the beginning of the year, the last 2 years, I'd say we were really talking about aligning with 5D and figuring out what our 5D pattern was in our story and our blueprint. And we have anywhere from 12 to 20 people, 10 of whom are consistent, like the same people always. And then we have people float in and out, but there can be 12 to 20 people usually every Wednesday. And so
people come and go freely too during that whole hour or 2 hours. Lately it's becoming a 2-hour process, but because it was just an hour show for a while, and then we just kind of just keep it open as long as people want to keep talking, especially if people are sharing stuff that's important to get out and to discuss, especially on their spiritual journeys and stuff. And again, us being 2 people that are not judgmental at all, we're open. Nothing sounds crazy to us.
Nope.
Everything is on the table and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
And stuff, and we're not afraid.
Right. And so one of the things we've recognized is that earlier, like the last couple years of this evolution where all these people share this piece of the path, is like it was really about 5D and understanding 5D and what the blueprint was. And now it's like all of a sudden in 2023, some tumblers fell into place. It's like, okay, guys, you're dialed in on this. You know what your plan is and you're figuring it out. Let's get the gears moving in 3D to change where this, like you're in these segments of a journey, right? And this segment that you were on where you were figuring out all this 5D stuff, you've got that locked. Let's move. It's like a tumbler set. You go to the next piece, and this next piece in 2023 is really about making things happen, because we're all great manifestors, whether we believe it and use it consciously or not. We are all great manifestors. And so this year is about aligning the physical plane with the spiritual plane to get us to this there's another segment that's coming out in a couple years that's going to be really important for the evolution of all souls, right? And so it's like we're in this little space where 3D, yes, I would say.
Right. And I think right now, 2023 is the time of change, all the way down to, us even experiencing where we've been. We know my job needed to change. Michelle's job has changed. And we need to be open to it. And we need to understand that it's for a reason. Not that we know of right now, but we know where we want to be in 3 years. And we talk about things happening after these 3 years. I think things are going to accelerate on this path of spiritual awakening through groups and stuff and a collective. It's going to take more than just, the single soul to continue this mission, but it's going to be a group of single souls getting together to help facilitate this change. It's going to take a lot of people, and I see a lot of unity coming together through all of this and stuff, and it's exciting.
Everything is so black and white now. We're all pitted against everything. It shows up in the politics. It shows up in the race comparisons. It shows up in so many things. It's all black and white right now, for lack of a better term. And it's like 50-50. And this 50-50. Tip has to happen. And we all have to be ready for it and okay with it when it does, because the shades of gray need to come back. Right now, it feels like we're so bifurcated. Dualistic in our process that's what twin flames are here for, partly, right? Male versus female has always been a theme in everything we do, and it really is right now. We're here to show and exemplify and embody the true ability to balance everything.
It's about balance.
The yin and the yang, right? The feminine and the masculine. That's what twin flames, how we can exemplify and show other people that it is okay to be in balance and to let those waters mix, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. So are we rare? Probably, because it's a big job, but there's going to be more coming, and we're here to lead the pathway because of this net. And what Justin was talking about, the groups of souls that are coming together and making the net stronger and spreading it around the world. We have people who join us regularly from South Africa on our call, Europe, we have Canada, Mexico every time. China, there's a girl in China, but she hasn't been on lately.
India.
Oh, India all the time. Yeah. So it's truly, we have this international network where there's one little light here, one little light there, and we're all going to coalesce into bigger nodes of light.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I would add that our goal, or maybe encapsulate or articulate that our goal as twin flames, or our mission, is to help accelerate rapid mass awakening.
Mm-hmm. By showing how two polarities can truly exist as one and be peaceable, comfortable enough to live together, move as one organism. If we can all be that, which is part of the source, that's what we're here for, right? Mm-hmm. Balance.
What is the difference between a twin flame and a catalyst or karmic connection, in your opinion?
Well, we like to talk about souls a certain way. We talk about souls being a song, like the most complex symphony you've ever heard, right? Mozart's symphonies have tens of thousands of notes, and that's what a soul is, right? And you can imagine copying and moving things around. Souls are projected into the bodies, right? And twin flames are when every note of those 10,000 words matches. And you meet that person, like we talk about that moment of ignition between us. You meet that person whose soul song is identical to yours down to the last note. And you have to pay attention. You're galvanized. You're like, I hear that person. That symphony is the same as mine. I don't hear any dissonant notes, nothing. Whereas with a soulmate, maybe you have like, or a karmic twin. There's a karmic twin in our view is like just a really close soul song, soulmate. So that's that 10,000 note symphony, maybe all but 3 notes are different or are the same, right? And those 3 notes contain all the lessons you're supposed to learn with those, whatever you want to call them.
And some dissonance. Karmics, you're like, whatever. That's not quite right.
And those are the lessons that you have to follow down in order to get to live to your, in your heart, the true song that's going on in there. And then to be able to hear that song coming from the other person when you find them, if you've chosen to be a twin flame. So that's kind of how we explain the karmics and what people say is a false twin. There's only one twin. There's nobody who's like Justin. Even looking back on it, I never thought about anybody else could have possibly been my twin. It was just that they were so much like me. And then by transference, right? So much like him because he's so much alike that I recognize habits and things that I liked in these people who were my karmics or whatever you want to call them before, all of these soulmates that were preparing me to meet him.
Yes.
And he'd be the amalgamation of all those most perfect things that I loved about everybody, and even the things that I hated, because those were the things I had to learn to love about myself and be okay with myself.
Yes.
Yep. I would agree with that. Yep, all that.
I have down here, excuse me, instant connection. They bring out your dark side, and I'm talking about like the catalyst or the karmic. They're addictive. It doesn't last. Controls the connection, so you feel in control of the connection. You mentioned that earlier. It's like it's not really love. It's more of a trauma bond or like an addictive quality.
They're filling some hole in you that you need filled in order to figure out what other parts are missing. Really, if you think about it, it's like this jigsaw puzzle. And those soulmates who are so close, they like fill those edges, but there's that one little jagged edge. You're just like, that piece does not belong there. And eventually it becomes like you have to expel that and move on to what's next because you're ready. Mm-hmm. You've learned.
And it's attachment.
Yeah.
They're upset when you transform. They bring out your worst fears. They don't inspire you necessarily to grow. They push your buttons, and you're dependent on this person. There's high highs and low lows, and they are typically irrational. Do you guys ever fight?
I don't think we've ever had a real huge fight, but there's been disagreements.
I'm not saying that you don't disagree. Right. I mean, do you ever fight?
No.
But
we're so freaking competitive with each other, even how fast we get done. Like, we use Sonicares, okay? So they're 2-minute things. Yeah. It's who starts that fraction of a second sooner so that they're done first and in bed first. Because
I'm the champion.
When he starts it every night, I'm like, motherfucker, I know what's how do I catch up? I can't turn it off early because he'd know I was turning. He would feel me getting ready to turn it off early, and he'd know, and then he'd smile and I'd lose anyway. So, that kind of thing. But there's no, we don't fight. What is there to fight about anymore? There's nothing to fight about. We had a lot of, Justin should tell this story because he's better at telling it than me. But when we first moved in together, started working on union, right? Is this a good time to talk about this? I don't want to
No, you're fine.
Justin should tell what it's because we had.
Yeah. So, because we're on the phone call weekly and stuff, and there'll be people like, you guys are so lucky. You guys are in union, and, and this is so, we're trying to achieve this and we're trying to do that. And every now and then I'll have to pipe in and say, be careful what you wish for, because what you think is hard now is going to be even harder when you do unite. And the reasons why is because we are the exact same person. So all the things we've learned to hate about ourselves, that person is going, that the other, your other half is going to show you exactly those same things on the other side. So
Yes.
again, those would come up. We would spend hours, you know, there'd be times when I have to get up and go to work the next morning at 6 a.m. and all of a sudden we'd be in the middle of something and we're not going to sleep until 2 or 3 now. Because again, you know, you always heard the thing, you know, you should never go to bed and sleep angry, right? And so that was always in play. And it's so true in this unity thing that you don't want to go to bed upset.
You can't.
Well, that's true too. We've tried. But you just have to sit there and dig it out.
Awake.
Dig it out.
Or you sit wide awake.
You sit there.
Right. And you sit there and then, you know, you play these mind games with yourself with, well, did I do something wrong? Why are, you know, what is this?
I didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't me. It was them.
So then you have to sit there and go, okay, to make this go easier, let's just blame it on me. You know, and then she would say, I'm not blaming you. You're not at fault. Why are you saying you're at fault? Now we're fighting about who's at fault, you know, and it's like, it just
but
total
we meant
circles.
it in the most real way. Like, okay, I would,
it's no one's fault.
Something would come up and I'd be like, it's this. And he'd have those feelings of like, because past relationships had taught him to run away from a female speaking her truth because she spoke it in a toxic, divine feminine way with the nagging and the yelling and the chasing after and the demanding the answers.
You're wrong and you're a piece of shit.
Right. Because you're a man ultimately, right? You're a male and you're going to embody all these things
with the
for
patriarchy.
Me. Right. So what I would, for us, between us, it was coming from, I'm so tired. I need to sleep. Let's just speak the truth. But I'd say it and he'd have to, and for me.
And then he'd have to process it.
He'd have to process it. But I was also having to, on my side, in order for me to even say those words, is I had to fight through all that divine toxic feminine training and the ways that I'd used to, because I was a narcissist. I'm the biggest narcissist you'll meet. I used to control everything around me. And I learned from a great narcissist, my dad. And I had to literally, like, I would embody that and I'd be like, well, I'm just going to say something to get this moving, right? Trying to control everything. And if I say it this way or I choose these words, he'll react that way. None of that shit works with your twin flame.
Nope.
Because they've been there, they've done it, they feel where you're really coming from. So it would have to come down to us taking off every last one of those ego masks that we're talking about.
Right. And then she would have to learn how I process things.
Right.
And that would make her mad because I shut down, I get quiet. I'll go to bed early. I'll go to bed at 9 o'clock in the evening, and usually we're up till midnight. So I'll go to bed at 9 o'clock, not say a word, because I just want to reset. And that's how I would reset my life, right? Is I'd go to bed angry at myself, and then I would wake up the next day and everything would be okay. And she wouldn't have it. She wanted to talk about it. And I'm like, I don't process that way. And so I had to learn how to process things quicker. Because again, what it was showing us is we can't go to bed upset and burying the same stuff. Because that's what I learned when I was growing up. You bury everything. You bury all the bad stuff. And that I found out that religion helped me learn how to do that, right?
Yeah.
You just push it down and move on because you got to go serve others. You don't take care of yourself. Just push it down so tight that it seems like it's gone, right? Yeah. And so that's how I would, going into moving it together, I was still keyed in on that. And that's how I would continue to deal with it. Even though I knew it wasn't right, I'd still want to just suppress it and just bury it way down deep.
But at the same time, I would feel him not wanting to have that between us. And I hated having it between us. And so you sort of begin to have this echo chamber effect when it's in a twin flame relationship. And these things, these triggers, we'll call them, right? We all know it's like this trigger comes up between the two of you and I do something that sets off this chain and we go through this and the echo gets louder. And that's where I think with twin flames, that's why it can be so hard to be in union because you have to learn all these tools and tactics and the ability to recognize this trigger and go, okay, we're going to get through this, but we have to talk about it now. We can't bury it anymore because if we do, we're going to have to deal with it later. And that's going to keep us longer on the path before we can begin accomplishing our mission. And even though you don't think those words consciously to yourself, that's why when you're coming into union, you have to work through those things so that you can get forward on the mission. And so it becomes less about the romantic part of the relationship or even anything. And it's like, there's this biological, but it's a spiritual imperative, not a biological imperative, that the mission is not served by this staying between us. Not only can we not stand being in the same room if we're in dissonance, but we also have to keep the mission moving forward, and we're not served by those triggers being there. So we root them out.
Yep.
But we couldn't have articulated that a couple of years ago. We had to like gnash our teeth and go through I can't do this. This is too hard. Oh my God, what did I get myself into? I can't do it. Right? And then to where we had to admit our own fault, and we had to look at the other person and go, okay, I'm trying to blame them, and I'm trying to like construct this scenario like I used to in my most narcissistic phase, and just let that all go and be like, ultimately, all I want is him to be happy every day, all the time. And I know I'm meant to be there, and we're happy together. And that means I want myself to be happy, because I don't want to disturb his happiness, because he'll feel it when I'm unhappy. So how do I make myself the happiest too? And so that's all it is, and just letting it flow and not letting the little differences that could blow up into big disagreements, they never happen. So no, we don't really fight. We mold.
Yeah. Sometimes we'll catch ourselves driving down the road, and something will be said, and it's like, you can't bullshit me. There is something wrong. No, there's nothing wrong. And then it's like, yeah, there is. I feel it. So,
just tell me what it is.
Exactly. And let's just get it over with. And, so we still even fall into some of that sometimes.
Rarely,
it's small
but
stuff,
it
but it's just funny, because then we'll start to laugh about it, because it's kind of funny, because, you can't call me out. You're going to call me out every time.
Can't bullshit
exactly.
a bullshitter.
Exactly.
And then, but then ultimately it becomes the reward cycle, right?
Yeah.
I feel so much better driving down that road, being free and easy and totally in simpatico and connection with this, that I don't want to mess around with any of that other stuff. And so I had to learn, right? I was raised an only child till I was 18. And so I always had to have things my own way. And I always got things my own way, right? And I had to learn how to recognize the beauty and the peace of like, okay, do I really need to be told that I'm right about who won the toothbrush race last night? I don't need to be told, or do I need to be right about who sang this song in 1972? No, I don't.
She's
so why am
wrong.
I am always wrong. That's why he's along.
No,
he
it's not
catalogs
Boston.
all that stuff. I always say it's Boston if I don't know, like old rock song that comes on. I'll go, it's Boston. He's like, no, it's not. I go, then it's Bad Company. And he's like, no, it's not. Why don't you just let me tell you who it is? Because I know. Because he has all that stuff. Like he's really good with that.
She has all this other stuff. I have this.
Yes.
Right? It's funny to identify who's got what, right? I remember music. She remembers words. I mean, she's got this vocabulary that just, to me, I just kind of, I don't even bother pronouncing it anymore. What's that word? Because I don't even want to try.
It's actually come to the point where he'll be reading an article and he's stumbling, because he's also got dyslexia in this body, undiagnosed, which I don't even know that we'll get to that, but it's this whole other part of our background and experience where he'll be reading an article out loud to me, and I'll be playing a game on my phone or whatever, and he'll come to it, and I can see the word because I can see it through his eyes. And I used to like jump ahead, right, and kind of correct you before you'd even come there. And you know what I do now is I can see the word and I know what it is, but I wait for him because I have this patience, because I would feel him feel inadequate, or like I was being bossy, or I was being a straight A student.
You're not trying to fix him.
I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm waiting for him, and he's going to tell me if he wants me to answer.
I'll sit there and spell out a long word, and she'll know it. I don't have to repeat it twice, the spelling or anything. And I'm like, okay.
But you see how the ego, we've learned, and that's a twin, being advanced toward union on this twin flame journey. That's what it has to come to, is this total patience for each other and acceptance, because you see why he got certain special skills and I got certain special skills.
Yes, and you balance each other.
Right.
And there's this consistent surrendering.
Flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I love math. She doesn't, but she was a banker, and I'm a retail worker.
I always say, yeah, I have a finance degree. I don't know what to do with numbers. I just know what to do with concepts. And he just rolls his eyes at me. He's like, you were a banker for 2 fucking decades. You can't do math.
That's what calculator's for.
Where's my I get out my financial calculator. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. And he just rolls his eyes at me. He's like, because he does all that stuff in his head. It's awesome.
When did you realize you were a twin flame?
January 11th, 2017. He was April 23rd, 2018.
Why do we know that?
Yeah, why do we know that?
Well, because so again, going back to that moment at Red Robin, we left from Red Robin and we were like, okay, well, we just knew we had to try each other out. So we met and we had sex and it was like nothing else in this world ever. And it was like,
what the hell
just happened to me?
Why is it so crazy between the two of us?
And why is it so, he's like, home, I don't care. It's just this. It's me. I'm here. I feel. I am. And that was what I didn't understand at the time. I was like, why should this person feel this way? This is not good. I don't want this. Reject, reject, reject.
Right.
Oh my God, get away from me. How did you make me feel this? Right. That's the old human reaction.
Yes.
Well, on the other side of the curtain, that spiritual reaction was going on. And it was like, oh, I'm home. What happened? And waking up. And that was like mid-July 2015. So fast forward, we were both cheating with lots of people, still trying to find, even after we found each other, then it was like, wait a minute, now I'm in the opposite camp. I've got to disprove that this is real.
So real.
And so I would sleep with more people, try more risky behaviors.
Introduce the running phase, the runner.
I had always been doing a dance with opioids and painkillers, and I started really towing the line with it. Like I was on 19 different prescriptions that summer, and we went for about 8. We went for until January of the next year. But what was weird was with all of our other partners who fell away quickly, with him, it was just like we started out seeing each other every few weeks, and then it became every week, and then it became where I started to really feel scared again because I was getting comfortable being with him and going to him and because he would ease my pain. He's my painkiller. And I wouldn't need the pills or anything when I was near him. And so that was where okay, so am I just addicted to this person? What is wrong with me? And then I got really upset because we had both told each other these lies, like, oh no, I'm not seeing anybody else, right? The lies that cheaters tell, especially, these two cheaters anyway. I'm not seeing anybody else. And I remember logging on to Ashley Madison one day. What was I doing logging on, looking for other people? And he was on, and he wasn't usually on like when I was on, because you could see when the other person's on. And I just was like, I was so scared inside. I was like, oh, he's lying to me. He's just looking for someone else. You'll recognize these little ego plays from not just a twin flame journey, but lots of romantic sexual journeys, whatever. Right. And it's like, that's it. I came to this point of vulnerability. I'm like, I like him too much. Why should I care that he's on here? I'm blocking him. Block him. And that was in January of 2016. And what ensued was like the worst 5 months of my life. I missed him every day. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why do I miss it? I don't miss anybody. I don't need anybody. I don't anything, right? Woman, hear me roar. And the pills got worse. I laid in bed all day. I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to go meet the other people that I was carrying on with, right? I didn't want to do any of the pursuits that I was had still been trying to fill my soul with, because it was there and I just didn't see it. And I ended up taking so many of the pills, and I was drinking and ended up in renal failure. They had to put me on metformin because I started to have diabetic numbers because I was so sedentary and everything. And my body was just breaking down, and I was letting it. And I was killing myself bit by bit, pill by pill. And there came this point where I was I finally said to myself, okay, you're going to snap out of this. And I took all of my pills and I put them away because I was told that I was going into renal failure and there's all this stuff that was going to happen, right? I ended up in the emergency room in about March. And I went home and I was like, I'm killing myself. I'm not going to do it. I felt for the first time in my life like I had something to live for. And I already had 2 kids and a husband and everything you could want in the American dream. Big old house, 2 BMWs, so much debt because my husband and I, soulmate husband and I, were both trying to fill these empty spaces in our soul and our separate soulmate souls. And we weren't fulfilling anything in each other anymore. And I put all the pills away. And I remember a week into that, my husband had gone on a business trip and I was jonesing so hard. I was going through withdrawals and my body hurt. I had to get up and just deal with the kids, get them watching TV or doing whatever they were going to do for the day and go back. And I was shaking and rocking. And the only thing that made me feel good was sitting under the hot water in the shower with that water hitting my skin because I was in the throes of withdrawal. And I ended up on I exhausted all the hot water and I ended up on the floor of the bathroom and I felt my soul drift up out of my body and I was watching myself from above. And this was a mind-changing moment for me, even though I'd attempted suicide before that. I hadn't come anywhere near this close, right? To my knowledge anyway. But I was looking down at myself and I was like, wow. Oh, and I had gone scrambling. I'd hidden all my pills at the beginning of the withdrawals and I had hid them in this big Ziploc bag underneath the sink. And so I was down on the floor jonesing and I went scrabbling and I couldn't find them. That giant Ziploc bag would not come to me, even though I knew it was in that cabinet. And I fell back on the floor and my soul floated up and I could see myself and I was like, I'm not ready to leave yet. What am I doing? Why? No. And all I could think about was I would never see him again. And I had to get back in that body. And I went back in my body and ever since that moment, I haven't wanted any kind of soul numbing, physical numbing agent or anything. And then I came back with this question in my mind. All right, now I'm going to have to figure out why it's him. Why is it him? Because obviously through all these last several months, I keep crashing further and further and I'm away from him and I miss him. And I'm so stubborn, I still wouldn't reach out to him. My husband came back from his trip and he found out about an affair I was having and all this drama happened for the next 2 months. And then on July 11th, 2016, which was the 1-year anniversary of when we met, I tried to commit suicide. I took a bunch of pills because my husband and I couldn't come clean and just say, I don't want to be married anymore. I was like, anything but saying the truth, right? Anything but saying the truth, even down to where I was willing to try and kill myself. And I remember taking those pills and thinking, why are you doing this? Just call him. There was this little voice nagging in my ear, just reach out to him. Just reach out to him. And I took the pills anyway. And my husband got me to the hospital and I was fine. And the next day I woke up ragged and worn and torn. And what's in my inbox? An email from him. I had blocked him everywhere. It was my real email. I didn't know how he got. I was like, how did he get my real email? I never give my cheating partners my real email. But it was just this simple note that said, I just want you to know I think about you every day and I never felt a connection with anybody like I felt with you. I don't know why you cut off all contact. And that was just those sentences and then a smiley face and Justin. And I was like, oh my God, I'm still here. I'm okay. And I don't know how it all happened, but it was at that moment we knew we were twin flames and I knew something was there. I didn't know the word twin flames. So fast forward a few months and I started my spiritual awakening. I really started to meditate and practice yoga and do all these things that I'd been able to read tarot cards when I was little and I had put those away and I got them out again. And all of these things were coming to me and I was learning and I was no more addiction, no more anything. It was I was just single-minded focus on me now all of a sudden, okay, I have to get better. And we were back in contact. And from that moment on, when I responded to that email, we haven't been out of contact for more than 24 hours. Yep. I mean, and we were still married to others, right? And it was like, all of a sudden I was like, I have to figure something out and I don't know how it's going to look. And I started to awaken. So I followed that spiritual awakening journey. And it came around to January 11th, 2017. So we had been together. We'd known each other for 18 months at that point. And my spirit team, who had started through all this process of like suicide and everything, all of a sudden I was connected and I could hear. And I accepted that the angels who had been talking to me were really real and had always been since I was a child. And they said to me, look up the term twin flame. Because I was sitting there this day going, I can't get him out of my head. I can't get him out of my head. Even though we were back together, I just couldn't get enough of him. And it was more and more and more. I needed more of him, but it wasn't an addiction. It was just because it felt right.
Yeah.
And it was the only place I felt right.
Yeah.
And they told me, look up twin flames. And so I went and I Googled twin flames. And there was this list, right, with 10 signs that you're a twin flame. And there wasn't as much stuff in 2017 as there is now.
No.
And I was like, every single box is checked. What is this? And they said, he is your twin flame. And they said, now stop reading. And don't ever read anything else about twin flames, but go figure this out. And you're not the one. I said, well, I have to tell him. I can't tell him. He'll think I'm crazy. And they said, you're not supposed to tell him. He'll find out. You'll know to tell him what this twin flame thing is when he asks you. 18 months later, on April 23rd, and you can tell your part of the story next, what came next. But
yeah, so on that was the day that I asked her about twin flames. The reasons why I asked is because my wife at the time, she's the one that said, something about twin flames. And I'm like, well, what's that mean? And then so this is coming not from her,
but
not from Michelle.
She find it?
Michelle, but Marlene is saying,
okay, and your ex-wife's name is Marlene,
yes.
And it starts with an M, and you're
correct.
Okay.
so Marlene's like,
I've got that going on too.
She's like, twin flames. She's brought it up, and I can't remember how she stumbled onto it. I think might have been already searching Michelle's Facebook page at that point.
Okay.
And she said something about,
I posted stuff about twin flames by that point.
So she goes, do you know what the twin flame is? And I'm like, no. She goes, well, Michelle knows. And at that time, she'd already knew about Michelle being in my life and stuff. So
we were negotiating
I was
that.
Like, yeah. So I was like, I don't know. And so then I started looking it up. And that's when I looked up the term twin flame for the first time. And I'm like reading it. And then that was also the same year that J-Lo came out and said something about A-Rod being her twin flame. And I'm just like, what is all this stuff all of a sudden out of the blue,
Yeah.
And things, I'm trying to piece things together and none of it made sense. And I'm like, that's just hokey stuff. Because, I was brought up in a religion that didn't believe in anything like that. And, accepting that kind of stuff would be hard. And so I just didn't even want to really even deal with it. I didn't realize that twin flame was real until one day. And what was the date on it when you cut the ties? That's the one
Yeah, that was April 23rd. Yeah, so this was all like in the months leading up to that, where Marlene had found out and was kind of following me on Facebook and heard about twin flames. And she told Justin, Michelle thinks she's your twin flame. You need to ask her what twin flames are. And he asked me, and that was when I knew.
So I'm at a hockey game, at a Portland Winterhawks game, and I'm sitting there, and, I had a conversation with Michelle on the way to the hockey game, letting her know that's where I was going to be and blah, blah, blah. And then she asked, something came up that I had been seeing someone else. And
okay, so
that upset her.
Yep. I said, were you still seeing someone in April of last year?
And I couldn't lie to her.
Or I said, when's the last time you saw someone else? And he said, April of last year. And I was like, I don't know what. It was such a hurtful thing. Like, it hurt so much. And I understand now what was going on, but it was like, wait a minute. I thought I knew what this all was. And I know what I feel. Can't he feel it? Why was he still seeing someone else? And the phone cut off and a picture of this tattoo showed up on his phone right?
Yep.
That's what was happening. And you went to the hockey game then,
Yep.
and you couldn't
Went
get
to
a
the
hold of
hockey
me.
game, and so I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden I just get this sickening feeling like, what the heck's going on? I wanted to like throw up almost. I mean, it was just a violent feeling of like something actually being cut completely off, like something dying. It was that dramatic, and I was like, what the heck? I even had to get up out of my seat and get up and walk away during the game. Usually, you get up during intermission to go get something, and I was like, I got to get up. And of course, Marlene's like, what's going on? And are you okay? Because I had turned white, and, it just didn't look okay and stuff. And, eventually it went away. And so I was like, okay, that was strange. I wonder what was going on. So then on the way home, I called you.
And I had my phone off.
Right.
Because I didn't want to talk to him. I was trying to deal with what am I feeling? Why? And I went on a walk.
Yeah.
And my grandmother showed up, and she's been one of my really important spirit guides. And she started saying weird, like these old grandma phrases, like, don't cut off your nose to spite your face, and 2 wrongs don't make a right. And I was like, Nana, shut up. She was saying all this stuff, and I couldn't stand it because of the hurt of what he had told me. And I was like, why am I hurting so much? I can't take this anymore. And I said, I can't stand this connection anymore. And I just like sliced through the air. And I was trying to cut whatever it was, and it was horrible, horrific, to the tips of my nerves, pain throughout my whole body. And I thought I was just going to faint there on the walking path. And Nana was like, I told you not to do that. Poof, she was gone. And I was like writhing in pain. And then I got up and I was like, well, I can't end this. I can't end any of it. I have to figure out how to deal with it. This twin flame thing really is real, and I have to figure out how to deal with it. And I had my phone off so nobody could reach me. And eventually I turned it on, and he called me on his way home from the game.
Yeah, and called on, and I told her what I experienced. And she told me what she had done. And I was like, okay, so there's got to be something to this, because there's no way I should have felt the things that I felt. And so that was the opening moment that I was like, okay, there is a connection there. Didn't want to accept at that point it was twin flames, but that's the moment that I was like, there's definitely something there that isn't right. Doesn't feel right. I mean, obviously it was right, but everything that you've been taught and grown up to believe in was just thrown out the window instantly. And, that began the journey of my twin flame experience and trying to understand it. And, all that wanted me to do was keep running and shutting everything down, and even to the point of making myself feel guilty after every time we were together, and, just all kinds of stuff, going forward from that. As I look back on it now, it was just me trying to avoid the inevitable, which was basically we were going to be together. But how was that ever going to work? That was my biggest fear. And, but I knew that I was never going to be happy if she wasn't in my life. So I knew that from that point on. So that would be the moment that the belief of twin flames was proven.
April.
If I had any doubts, they were proven to, this is a true connection.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you've covered some of this, so let me skip ahead because I haven't really looked down in a bit.
I know. Sorry, I always do that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You don't need to apologize. Okay, so do you think about each other all the time? Can you explain what that is like?
Yes. So that's one of the things so now we have all these reference points, right? You guys kind of know our story. So after I went through the withdrawals in March that I talked about, I knew I was feeling him, and I kept trying to deny it all the way up until we got back in contact. And then I could start to confirm things, and I could start to confirm the physical things. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, he'd always been this little angel sitting on my shoulder. Right here is where he sits, and I hear his voice, and I hear his thoughts. And sometimes when we were in separation, I would even get visions of where he was. There was this one time he was at what was that place called? Fry's, with his wife. And I didn't know anything. And I closed my eyes and I saw him walking behind Marlene, and I opened my eyes and I was like, what? And I closed my eyes again. And I was like, I even knew which aisle they were on. And I was like, well, they're at Fry's electronics store. What? And then I asked him later, and yes, they'd been at Fry's. And so, yeah, I'm always hearing him, and he's always there. And he's just part of my consciousness now. But yeah, there are these flashes where we're actually the quantum us, whatever it is, this twin flame quantum bond, right? Where I'm literally where he is and he is where I am. And I could check in with him like at work, since we've been in union. I'd close my eyes and I'd go, yeah, I can tell here's where he is, or here's what he's feeling. So yes, for me.
I always, yeah. I experienced it a little bit different because, again, up until recently, always had to put on a 3D mask when I went out into the world to kind of block those feelings so that I could concentrate and continue to do work at work and be focused on work. So, I continuously always put on that mask. So when I do put on that mask, I unfortunately was able to block her thoughts and her feelings out for the most part, because they would be so distracting. I couldn't think at work or do anything. And every day at lunchtime, I left. Work was close enough. I get an hour lunch, so it was like a 15-minute drive home. And every day when I get home, I would go and sit on the couch, and she would clear my mind. She would do Reiki, bettering on me, and that'd be my 15, 20 minutes a day where I got recharged to go back out into the world. My batteries were again refilled, and I could continue my day and be productive the rest of the day. So again, that being an empath, right, in retail is awful because you feel everybody coming through the door, every single problem, every single issue. And it's like having to try to separate, okay, what am I feeling? Is it me, or is it someone else around me that's bringing these feelings onto me? And I'm having to learn how to shut that stuff off and push it away as soon as I can identify it and stuff and things. And the only way I could ever do that is to go home, get recharged. She'd have to clear my mind and get rid of all that negative energy and flush it out so that I could go back and perform at work and stuff. So yeah, every day can't be more than 3 or 4 hours at a time that I would need to be refreshed battery wise and that kind of thing. That's how I explain it. Just getting your energy back. And then afterwards, I would come home after work and we'd sit on the couch and continuously touch one another and stuff, just so that, it was cleansing for me, and stuff. So that's kind of how that works.
And he's if you had to put a label on it, like 3D twin, 5D twin, right? Because he feels it in 3D and literally feels it like batteries discharging and needing to be recharged, and knowing that I'm there, but being able to kind of put up this filter, right? It's all very kind of 3D feeling stuff because that's larger part of his role. And the larger part of my role is though that spiritual stuff where I've got like the remote vision and the, oh my gosh, I can actually see it and I can hear it and I even know what they're talking about. And oh, they're having an argument tonight and I know what it's about, and then would hear about it maybe in a roundabout or whatever. That didn't happen. He didn't argue much with Marlene because they're best friends and they still are. But when they would get into it about me and Justin choosing this journey to fulfill what he'd been seeking for so long, like I'd feel that come through. So yeah, I think we are. I mean, we just are, right? It's that whole quantum thing where it's the two quantumly entwined molecules are in two different places, but they're in the same place at the same time.
And it's incessant.
Hmm?
Yeah.
It just never shuts off.
No.
I've never thought about somebody so much in my entire life. Yeah.
It's always there.
It's always there. They're always there. Okay. How did you learn to surrender? That might be a big question for both of you. We've made it through page 1 of questions. But you have covered some of this, so this is good.
surrender is not a destination. It's a journey within a journey. It really is. It's something, it's really not. The twin flame community likes the word surrender but it has all these connotations to me of like waving a white flag and being like, I give up. And it's not that. It's like acceptance, and it's a balance. And every day, I use the phrase every day so that people can identify with it. For Justin and I, it's really rare, but every day I do wake up and make continual choices to just let it flow, to accept wherever he is at, whatever he's feeling. I don't care. We're occupying the same space. This is what we're meant to do when we came here. I accept. I surrender to whatever he needs. But then he feels the same way about me. And so how do decisions get made? Well, one of us has the kernel of a thought like, oh, bills need to be paid today. And maybe you don't say anything. And then the other will go, we need to pay bills today, like within an hour or something. And then we both sort of converge on everything. And it truly is, right? It's like a flow. And I think that's what, like, those are some 3D examples of what the surrender part looks like for us. Like, I surrender needing to be anything special other than just what I am with him all the time. And all I want is what he is with me all the time. So all the other stuff I just let go of. And that's the surrender.
That's the surrender.
Yeah.
That everything is perfect.
Yeah, and just let it be, because there's forces that we set in motion as souls, ripples in the universe that are echoing out and coming back to us to make the things manifest when they're supposed to, as long as we're doing what needs to be done in that flow and in that surrender and waiting for it to come back to us. Like this 3-year period, to go back to, again, what we talked about earlier,
and we just settled on that this year. I mean, we were in total denial for a long time that all this stuff was going to happen and we didn't need to worry about anything and blah, blah, blah. And then the team told us, nope, you guys are going to have to sit down and plan out what your next 3 years look like and understand what the journey is now to give you peace of mind. Because before that, it was all like, how are we going to get there? And I want out of my job, and
but I want to
be
money.
serving. Yeah, exactly. I want to be serving our piece that we're supposed to be doing on this journey and stuff. And my 3D job is not helping with that. I'm always tired at the end of the day. And Michelle's burnt out because she was working so hard on being the only one doing the spiritual stuff on the other end and stuff. And so we just had to finally recognize that, nope, we now have to share that burden and that workload together. And so we're like, okay, what's our 3-year plan then? Because in 3 years, we want to be at a certain point. Yeah. So I had to learn how to let go of my job and stop trying to hang on to all the stuff that was burdening us with financial problems and things like that. We just had to give it up and go, okay, how do we make this whole thing work out? And how do we get on this path again? But truly be supporting each other on all sides, not giving the spiritual thing side to Michelle and she'd have to carry that burden every day. And then me having to carry the 3D burden all day long. It was just too much for me to handle and too much for her to handle on the other side, that we just had to come together and say, how are we going to split this up? And then in 3, where do we want to be and how soon? And we know we have commitments that we have to be in the Portland area for the next couple of years. So let's accept that instead of just hoping that one of us is going to change our minds and we're going to go ahead and move or not move, so that we can get this thing rolling. And then it just came through us getting together and sitting down and going, okay, here's our timeline. This works for us. This is what we're going to do. This is what it's going to lead up to. And then just over the last couple of months, everything's worked out.
Everything that we said in that moment when we kind of came out of that last 5D planning period, which is where we were, when we like learning to be in union, right? Like and all of this 5D spiritual stuff. It's like, okay, now we really have to have the rubber hit the road, and we have all these things that let's do that we want to achieve. And then all of a sudden, one by one, we had to be patient over the last 6 to 7 months. But every step that we identified, like we want to have an RV and we want to own a piece of property in Arizona and all these things, like literal 3D goals now. But yet here we are, we need to be in Portland for at least 3 more years. So how is we going to let that happen? And once we let go of his job and my job, which used to be 100% of the time I'd work on the mission and he'd be out earning the money at the 3D job. And now I was like, well, I'm just going to get a 3D job, but I'm only going to have a 3D job that fits within my boundaries so that I'll be free part of the time to do our spiritual work. And then he gets to give up that big job that was paying all the bills, right? And take a smaller job. So we really literally like rebalanced everything. We didn't know how it was going to work or look at the end of 22. And January is when we kind of gave up and he was able to start doing some self-care. And it's like, but how are we going to pay for things? How's it going to work? And then everything just one by one, like I got the job that's perfect. And I obviously have a mission to accomplish at that place. Right now, I know that I'm there. I'm like, okay, so the team put me here on purpose. I'm fulfilling my part of the responsibility for the 3D stuff, but also it's giving me this other element of the spiritual journey. And Justin now gets to pick up doing more of the spiritual stuff and take a smaller 3D job. And our health has come into more focus and all these things. Like, that's what it's been about, letting go and letting it happen.
So
again, surrendering, even in the 3D realm, right? We're talking about surrendering earlier, that you even have to do that in all the things that you do. And it was funny because what was coming up was the same issues that we had that was trying to stall us from moving on together, right? Financials. I mean, that was the biggest thing between us both before we decided to get divorces, right? What are we going to do financially? I can't just leave and, I'm going to be in debt. How are we going to take care of all that? Blah, blah, blah. And what did we end up doing? We trusted in ourselves to make this and that we were truly going to be happy. And we did it, right?
And part of our happiness.
That was back in 18, right?
Right.
And we were like, oh, okay. So we put ourselves first and it's working out. Everything's going to be fine. Then you take us 5 years into this thing of being together and all of a sudden now I've let the 3D realm creep back in there with finances, right? So I can't quit my job. What am I going to do financially? How are we going to be set up? We want to be debt free. We want to be this. We want to be that because we need to be so that we can serve others eventually the way we want to be able to be there for them, right? So I had to again learn to trust us or me, which is also Michelle, right? So we're all one, and just trust that it was all going to be okay. And to let it go. Financially, somehow, we were going to be taken care of. Everything from medicals to financially, too. And so it's worked its way out. But again, it had to be me finally letting go again and trusting that the team was going to take care of us.
And trusting that we were together in it all. I mean, last year we had his heart surgery and I had to have an emergency hysterectomy because of fibroids. Ugh, awful stuff. 2 major surgeries in 2022, which is like tying off all that spiritual learning. And we had our bodies literally changed, right? And we had these huge physical surgical alterations, and then we come into 2023 and it's like, okay, yay, but now how's it going to happen? And we had to be tested on that trust again, because all the learning that you see, you probably recognize this, right? It's all a spiral. You learn a lesson once and you're like, yay, I mastered that, and then you come back around the curve and you're like,
nope.
The door, right? The knock at the door again. And you're like, wait a minute, I already learned this lesson. Oh, wait, it's a little different this time.
Yeah.
I got to learn this slice at it. And so that's how we've exemplified. I mean, there's a lot packed in there, but that's how we exemplify that spiral learning and
right.
3D and coming in alignment.
That continues in unity.
Right. And
the whole time. You are relearning lessons.
Yeah.
They're easier to identify, though, and say, hey, we learned that way before, or why is it we're learning it again? So we avoid it again next time. And, you'll probably end up with that same lesson, but there'll be something else that you have to tackle to get past that. Exactly, right? So you're learning each time, and that's what you have to take.
A deeper integration or a deeper realization.
Precisely.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you get the whole twin flame echo thing going on through all that. So you have to manage. Well, see, but then it comes back to the flow. You just have to trust that you sitting right there is going to do whatever this you sitting right here would do. And so it's okay. Like for me, I've really had to let go of that control. Right? I used to have all these control needs to feed the egos and fix the traumas that I'd had. And with him, I don't need any of that. I just know that he's going to do it. Ultimately, he's going to make the same choice I would make. So why make anything out of it? I'm just going to wait and he'll take care of what he needs to take care of and it'll all meet up. Yeah.
Yep.
It's surrender. It goes back to surrender, flow.
You met each other in 2016, correct?
15.
15. Then it was an 18-month period of essentially a reckoning for you, or a recognizing it for you. And then another 18 months or so for you to kind of
Get to the same
conclusion.
Correct.
And then you've been together for 5 years at this point in union, what we would describe as maybe even reunion. And now you feel like there's another 3-year period where the two of you, it's very interesting, the timing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that because we threw around a lot of dates. Okay. So what were the particular triggers that the two of you have needed to heal in order to create your divine union?
I just mentioned one for me, control, and the narcissism. Well, we're both narcissists, and we both have control issues. So it's hard to ask that. I mean, I can't answer. I can answer it for me.
We throw around the term, sorry if I can
Nope, go ahead.
interrupt. We throw around the term narcissism a lot lately, especially lately, because we live in a narcissistic society for sure. But so we'll say you have narcissistic tendencies. And did you both have narcissistic parents as well?
Mm-hmm. Dad, mom.
And so, and I find that do you find that is also a commonality? And I have that actually down here later on, but do you find that that's a commonality in most twin flame relationships?
Yeah.
Me too.
I think so, because I think, again, we all have a little bit of that in us. It's just identifying that you have it and then know how to, I wouldn't say use it, but at the same time, you need to identify that it can get out of control, right? To where you want ultimate power over somebody. And that's what you're trying to do, is influence them to change for you.
Or emotionally manipulate them.
Exactly.
Create a reality distortion field around them that you control all that reality of that distortion field.
And it's funny to go back and look at our lives as we grow up and go, that's what I was doing there, and that's what I was doing there, and that's what I was doing there. So now I'm able to identify those are the things that I didn't like, but enjoyed during that time, right? But I wouldn't want anyone doing that to me. Mm-hmm. So now that's the difference when you look at this stuff, is you look on the other side of it going, okay, I can identify that now, and that used to be me. So again, going back, not judge others that have that intent. We meet a lot of folks that you can still hear that in their lives as they're trying to get through their spiritual journey. And it's like, and sometimes we try to, talk to that part, and say, hey, we need to be accepting of this and we need to be accepting of that, and identify that we don't need to control every situation. We just need to listen. Because I think when we take the time to listen, we open that up for that other person to feel comfortable to divulge whatever information you want from them, but they're willing to give it instead of you having to manipulate to get it, right? Mm-hmm. And if they don't want to give it to you, then there'll be another opportunity where, they'll want to talk about it later on down the road, whatever. But it's being acceptant of that.
In all situations, all the time, starting with self and twin. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was coming to the realization of loving myself. Because if you don't do that, then you are being a narcissist out there, just trying to cover up whatever pain you have to hopefully inflict more pain on someone else so that you don't have to look at your own pain.
And that's because you're an empath and you want misery loves company, right? So you hear all these little phrases. And I don't know, for me, all these little phrases that you hear about the ways that people should be, the golden rule and all of these things, they really are so true at a spiritual level, right? And when you're fighting against all of those old truisms, that's when I know, you very kindly reminded us used narcissistic tendencies, but I identify as a narcissist. I have been a narcissist. I still could be, except I don't like how it makes me feel anymore because I've gone and I've practiced my narcissist on him and the bullshit look that comes in his eyes when I do it. And then I'm like, okay, do I want to keep lying to myself because he's not buying this? So do I want to keep lying to myself or not? Nope, it's not worth it. And then I shed that narcissist, or I I come to harmony with my narcissist self. My more spiritually evolved self still contains my narcissist. They're just in harmony now, where I can see it and go, you're being such a bitch. You're being such a control freak. Knock it off. Like, that's to myself. And it's in the most loving way, because I don't want to be out of harmony. I don't want him feeling me feeling that way, or feeling me trying to do that to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that, you would say, is more of your shadow side.
Right.
Yeah. And coming into harmony with your
Precisely. Shadow side is a much better way to put it, because it encompasses more than narcissism, right?
Yes, of course it does. Yeah, of course it does. Okay. Did either of you ever feel smothered by your unconditional love for each other?
No.
Okay, I was all my life, what was I looking for? Somebody who wasn't telling me I was already too fat, or too this, or too loud, or I talk too much, or whatever. He's never that's what I was looking for, and that's what I found, and that's what I show him, because whatever he's going to bring me, I don't care what it is. Every day, it's just that it's me. I'm there. I'm whole. So whatever that part of me is going through, I unconditionally love it, and I'm just here for it. And so...
Was it always like that, though, even at the beginning?
No.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
We had to find, right? Everything is love, right? But you still have to dig around and find it. And you got to identify it and polish it off. And it's like a diamond, right? It's in the rough. You pull it out. You're like, this thing doesn't look like, toss it aside. It's old glass. But you polish it and you go, oh my gosh, I recognize it. What would you say?
Well, I was going to say that, yes, that those issues were there, but not like with anyone else. I mean, it was very, very small. But you have to identify that it was there. Exactly, right? The feeling of being safe in that, where, if it was with someone else, you would hide it. You wouldn't even deal with it then, right? So, of course, you handle it different, but I would say it's a whole different experience. And that's another thing about the twin flame experience is it's trauma or anything that you feel or get triggered by feels so much different than it did before. It's like everything is different.
It's out of phase.
You can't go back and say, hey, this is how I used to feel about it, and remember what that felt like, because you don't.
Right, because we've vibrated at this different frequency together now, right? And so that when those things come up, you can't even get back in that frequency, right? It's like that frequency no longer exists. It's all totally integrated in here, but I so prefer this frequency that I can't even push myself back into that. And we do that together all the time, so it never smothers. And even when we were having our affair and all that time, I only ever wanted more, but I never tried to, I don't think we never demanded things from each other.
No.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't, and neither of us would issue an ultimatum ever to each other. It would just be we'd quietly turn and walk away and cut the other out. Like, that's how we would have dealt with it. There wouldn't be any of that, and we would never do that to each other. So I don't think I've ever felt smothered at all with you, not even a bit.
How about afraid?
There's been times.
Yeah.
Because, again, you go back to those old feelings of, I don't want to be hurt. So, of course, fear comes into the fact that you might be hurt. So you do feel that. But then when you go through it enough with your twin, you notice that it's all going to be okay on the other side. And you trust that it's going to be okay on the other side. There's no doubt. There's no doubt that,
they're going to keep showing up.
Exactly.
Because they
hard lesson to learn because you still
they keep showing up.
Well, right. And because they are you. I mean, I am never going to abandon there is no place else for me.
Yeah.
Except right here, which is really here. For those who are listening, it's like I'm a bigger two-headed thing now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that, have you ever talked about or read about, now I'm going to forget, is it Socrates or Plato, who said that, I think he described what we would think of as twin flames, which is two heads, one body, 4 arms, 4 legs. And then that was how love was born. I can't remember. I'm totally butchering this, but I'll send you the link and then you'll know what I'm talking about maybe when you read it. Or maybe you won't. I only came upon that idea of his through the twin flame journey. And I was like, whoa, we share all of this stuff. And we're just like the arms and the legs on the outside. And we each have two heads. So that's what I was trying to show
like
people.
Conjoined twins.
Right.
Okay. So let's see. So let's talk about some stages, right, for twin flames. The first one, you kind of have touched on all of it, is recognition and temporary awakening, like being in paradise, or what most people would say is like the honeymoon phase of any relationship, right?
Right.
And then 2 is the testing, or the conflicts of ego and fears, bringing the outdated stuff up to the surface.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we talked about. Yeah,
and
with
then
triggers.
3 would be the crisis, when the twins reject their beloved. So one person rejects the other person. And then 4 is the runner-chaser dynamic, where there's soul rejections and abandonment. And 5 is surrender, where you put full faith and trust into the divine. Not necessarily into each other, but into the divine, right? And the divine actually brings the two of you together unexpectedly sometimes, even when you're not trying. For instance, with the email address, and she still doesn't know how you have it.
And he doesn't know how he has it.
Right. And 7 is harmonizing, right? The unconditional love between the two of you.
Right.
And being in balance.
Right.
And being in balance with yourself.
Right.
And I would challenge that those are even steps of the journey. Those are steps of every day now. They're all intertwined in every day. Like it's just a constant, and that's the flow.
You pass through it.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Even the running and chasing?
Yeah. But it's rarer now.
Correct.
The running and chasing.
It might pop up there for a second where I don't want to talk about it right now. And so it's more of the physical of being in,
close proximity.
Exactly. And you want to get away. And then it dawns on you that there's no use because
there's nowhere away.
Yeah. There's no
We're
way.
mentally connected. We're telepathically connected. We're everything. So where are you going to run to?
But in these 3D bodies, you're programmed
but you
to
want
think
to.
that way.
You still want, like we still have that crop up. It's rare, but it'll crop up. And then we have to go, okay, we've done this before. Let's get through it and we'll deal with this pain. And now it's like seconds of pain versus hours of pain when we were first in union, right? Because we're willing, we're practiced, we get it. The trigger's there. We're okay that there's a trigger. We're going to be okay on the other side of the trigger. We're still going to be together. The mission's still there. So let's deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a quicker reckoning and then a quicker integration process.
Because it's hard to cleanse the 3D body of stuff. It's buried so deep within us still that it would probably take us a lifetime to purge the body of that.
Yeah. Well, there is no perfect, right?
Right. Exactly.
It's all a balance.
Okay, let's see. Do you feel like each twin has a unique journey planned at birth that you cannot change or influence?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We did it though. You alluded to the divine a moment ago. And the divine, yes, we trust in the divine, but who's the divine to us? It's our higher self.
Right.
Right? And so that's the divine that we trust. And that divine is the same as other people's God or source or Allah or whatever. It's just that when we say divine, that divine us created a plan. And there were waypoints along this plan. I'm not saying, it's like chutes and ladders. Does a chute open up here and there? Yes. Does a ladder open up? Yes. Do you always take them? No. Whatever. It's all kind of there. And there's always free will. You don't have to do any of it. You don't have to. You don't have to do anything to be with your twin flame if you don't feel like it.
Right.
But then you have to be willing to accept that whatever you've learned up till now and started to feel up till now, you're probably not going to be able to hide it or run from it anymore. So you got to carry it with you and live with it and be okay not going the next step.
Yes. And some people make that choice.
Right. Free will in all of this. But there is you came with a plan because none of us came here willing to do this fucking hard journey with all of its challenges without some end goal and point. And let me tell you, if you can't have already guessed from our voices when we talk, this being home, having this of me all together and me feeling whole, there's nothing like it. Right? we came here to achieve this as part of the twin flame journey, this feeling of union and safety and reassurance and constance and wholeness. So I think we all came here from our higher selves with the idea and goal of being in union. We get to choose whether we're going to do it or not, but that's one of the desserts, and that's it feels good, right? All the hard work is worth it. When I put my head on his shoulder at night and throw my right leg and my right arm over his torso and just like, we're one again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He's like, you couldn't have said it better.
That's bad when you got two twin flames sitting here. It's like, yeah.
I know. We have to.
I would just sound like a repeat recording. So it's like, I'd have to think of some new words, put it in my own, so I'm not plagiarizing.
Too much pressure. Get ChatGPT in here too. No.
Okay, so I had individual questions for the two of you because we've covered a lot of it because you actually kind of really shared a lot of your journey. Okay, so Justin, how did you learn how to feel safe enough to open up your heart?
Wow. I believe truly it took all the experiences I had up to a certain point. I remember when, of course, when you're going through a divorce, you're like, okay, what are you supposed to do? Grew up Christian, so, you got to try to fix this, blah, blah, blah. Started seeing a marriage counselor and then went and saw my own personal counselor. And that's where I started experiencing a lot of my awakening was through my counselor, my personal counselor. And who happened to be a Christian too. And so it was funny because he really opened up my eyes to what I had experienced just growing up and identifying when the lies started in my life and then what those lies did to me throughout every decision that I made as growing up as a kid and then getting married. Why did I get married? For all the wrong reasons. The biggest thing was the lie to myself that I was able to, just accept somebody to be my lifetime partner, right? Not being in it for love, not being in it for, the things that you were supposed to, but that's what you were supposed to do is get married and get a house and all that kind of stuff, right? And so he really helped me open up all this stuff going, okay, so if this has all been a lie from the beginning, where's the truth, And so for me, it was that experience where I started tapping into, into my mind and digging stuff up from so down deep and dark stuff that I, had told nobody. I had to go back and look at and identify and find out where the lie was that caused it to happen. And that was the biggest lesson for me was, I've been a liar all my life without even really wanting to admit to it. And so I needed to purge that and clean that out before I could even see the truth, see the light. Again, when I look back at it, it's all these were keys to getting me to acceptance and being able to open up and be, to freely expose myself to myself, which in return, I can expose myself to my twin completely and openly and show all my demons, right? And the stuff that I've been guarding and trying to hide from everybody because now I can't, you've got someone on the other side that knows all your dirtiest secrets and knows all your, what people would call filth or whatever. It just didn't make you feel good. Right. But also accepting that as that was the journey that I had to experience. I had to experience those things because if I didn't experience those things, she would never be able to experience those things.
And right? I love all those things about him because he wouldn't be what he is for us now without every bit of that filth.
Right.
Whatever you want to call it. It's so funny to look
back because, we talk about the 360 part of everything, but we also talk about the 180 because the 180 is the complete opposite of each other that we grown up with. I grew up in poverty. We had no money. I was the oldest of 6 kids. Mom and dad went bankrupt early in life, so we didn't have all the things. We were on welfare. We had food stamps. I knew what that was. I knew what that experience was like, you know. And then my twin, on the other hand, totally 180 degrees the other way. She had everything she wanted, and she was the only child, so she got all the love, right? I'm the oldest of 6. My love that I was receiving from my parents stopped at the age of 1.5 when my brother was born, right?
Yeah.
And then the next set of kids came along, and then 5 years later, another group of 3 came along. So it was like, it was always the attention that I needed to get or needed or wanted, I couldn't get from my parents growing up. And but then all I saw was, you know, the pain and stuff of growing up without money, and, you know, no one's going to take care of you but yourself. And so early in life, I had to learn that I needed to watch out for myself, and I needed to provide for myself, and I needed to make things happen for myself if I wanted things, right? Where, you know.
Do you find that that's pretty typical with the divine masculine?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is really feeling the need to protect yourself from true unconditional love, and having the overwhelming sense that you have to do everything yourself.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That lesson has been drilled or hammered into you.
Correct.
Right. That you're alone in this world. Like, that's your abandonment story, right? Yeah. The divine feminine abandonment story, a little bit different, right? But that the divine masculine is really like, nobody's here for me. I have to make it in this world.
Right. And it kept being shown over and over again. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. So at some point at the age of...
I did not know you were a Jehovah's Witness.
So at the age of 25, I decided that it was done, and I needed to leave that because, again, with that, I was going to learn a big lesson, which was not having family. Right. So all through my life, what I can see is I was always pushed out, you know, the oldest of 6. So, you know, boom, pushed out. Got to an age where I got, I removed myself from them. I wasn't disfellowshipped. I wasn't, you know, removed by the Jehovah's Witnesses. No, I chose to write a letter saying I was resigning from being that because I did not believe in any of that again. And of course, my parents and siblings have all shunned me. So, you know, did I miss out on some things growing up? Even in my early adult life? Of course. I mean, I've got nieces and nephews, and I've got, you know, probably great nephews and nieces that I will never know because we're separated, and we've been that way for a long time. Who knows? Maybe later on down the road, that'll all become something that will come back together. I mean, there's still always that hope. But at the same time, I was continuously being shown that even though I was thinking I was taking care of myself, I wasn't. It was all going to lead somewhere else, right? Even though I had that false security that, man, you can throw anything at me, you know, take my parents away, take my blood away, take everything, you know, everything that's important to someone that grows up as a male, you know, blood is thicker than water and all this stuff, you know, being tied into a religion that really believed in all that, right? That you need to accept every single word we say, or we're going to cut you off, you know? And so I always felt that I got tired of trying to work to stay in something, and finally realized that I needed to be on my own and cut away to be able to learn what I've learned over these last couple of years and stuff. And so looking back on all that, would I change anything? Heck no, you know? Maybe before all this, I probably would have said, yes, I would have liked to have grown up with money and not having to worry about this or that, but it's given me the keys that we need to get to the next level and identify that. And what were my experiences and things of growing up that we're going to be able to share? I mean, that's why we call ourselves warriors. We believe that we've got these scars that prove what is real and that we've experienced that situation. We can go back to it and say, yeah, this scar was from this and this scar was from that. That's why we're warriors and not survivors. So...
And we were we were not recording at the time when we were talking about the 360. And we were going to touch on that when we were recording. So do you, Michelle, or do you want to talk about that really quick?
So I'll just finish the example that Justin was giving.
Please do. Which is also mirroring, right?
Right. It's mirroring. And it's... the mirror is a funny thing, right? It's not always about what the mirror is always showing you something. It's really not about it's showing your lesson, right?
And it's not an exact replica.
It's not an exact replica.
It's like the opposite.
Right.
It's like if you do the left hand, he does the right.
Right. And you're actually moving different ways and coming together. A lot of people think that if they feel a certain way, their twin has to feel that way. And that's not what the mirror for us has been about. Mm-hmm. No. For us, it's a tool that shows us where the healing is misaligned. And so the mirror of what Justin grew up with, right? Part of why he knows now my experience being very privileged on the other side. I had I had a suite of bedrooms adjoined by, it's not like super rich fantasy girl stuff, but way more than the average suburban kid growing up in affluent. The 70s and 80s, affluent. And I had all the toys I wanted, and I still experienced a ton of traumas. I had a ton of pain. I had things I had to go through. It wasn't all sunshine and roses. And so meanwhile, a lot of times I wish that I just had it easy and wouldn't have to make any choices, right? And so I was wishing that I had what Justin had, totally unbeknownst to me, a couple thousand miles away, right? We're mirroring each other in these ways. And therefore he knows that I didn't have it better than him, even though I had a very privileged upbringing compared to him. We both know there were lessons in each, and there were bright points in each too. There was beauty well mixed in with the pain in both. And we've each taken those 180 degrees of like a circle that we experienced growing up and becoming who we were when we met and decided our soul was ready to come into union. Right now we've merged all those together, and it's kind of like we can see it from every angle and in between. We're not judgmental of any of it either. And we see the good and the bad of both ways. And we see people fighting with their identities through similar pathways and byways, and where they're feeling a lack or feeling guilt for abundance or whatever. Like, we see all of that because we lived both sides of it.
Yeah.
That's our 360 degree thing that we came upon as a tool really a long time ago, pretty early in union. We were like, oh, everything's opposite. I was brought up in a house where religion wasn't allowed to be mentioned. My dad said, I will not have my daughter inculcated in a religion, in a belief system that she had no part choosing, right? I remember him yelling that at my mom in the kitchen when I was like in first grade, or maybe, it was first grade probably. And I remember thinking, and I remember the word inculcated, right? Obviously, I'm a logophile, right? So you can tell even at that young age, I thought, well, I don't know what he means, but I get that we're not supposed to talk about God.
Yeah.
Or I'm not supposed to ask to go with my friends to church or whatever. And I was like, okay, that's just one more thing I don't have to worry about. So religion had nothing to do with my upbringing, except tangentially for my parents' upbringing, which incidentally, they were both Catholic, brought up. And my dad created this negative space for me of religion. And so nobody ever taught me any of that. And he, on the other hand, chose the path between the two of us. We said, okay, he's going to go through the absolute trial by fire of religion, being born into what we call a cult, what we refer to as a cult, and learning to choose himself through it. And see, I had no pattern of religion, and I had to learn to choose myself through that without religion being at all in the picture.
Yeah.
And so we came to the same place, and that's our 360 kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
The mirror sits in the middle. Right? If you think about it, the mirror's here, and I've got my 180 on one side and his 180 on the other.
And I feel like it just consistently is showing you the work that still has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've
learned more in this experience than I have in the rest of my life.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I've come, like, if my journey so far has been 150 miles, the first 50 were done in the first 40 years, and 100 of it has been done in the last 10.
Yeah, yes, for sure. Are twins generally on different timeline trajectories that you've found?
I don't know what that means.
Meaning you started your spiritual awakening earlier process, and then, right?
We've traded constantly. Look, he was brought up in a spiritual belief tradition, right? The cult was a spiritual belief tradition. Yes. I was not. So we've constantly had this, these patterns and ways that we've chosen to learn what we came to. So is one of us is always ahead or behind, but that's what we're honing in on, right? That's where the balance is that if I call myself the spiritual twin, am I really ahead of him? No, it's just that I have the funnel dialed a little differently and his funnel is dialed a little differently. But ultimately, it's because those two funnels mix together and are exactly what they're supposed to be. But we had to have one antenna that was attuned to the 3D and the one that was attuned to the 5D in order to be this. So I think all twins, they may just not realize that for themselves yet. And if you're not close to union or able to like practice this stuff together, what I'm saying probably sounds like gobbledygook and gibberish, right? Because you're in separation and you're in pain and you want to be with your twin because the mission is beating inside of you, whether you realize it or not. And the unconditional love is beating inside of you, whether you realize it and embrace it or not, right? And so I'm probably speaking a different language. Certain people will recognize it, that is, that's really the ahead and behind of it. Like, I don't know how else to say it, except I'm not ahead of him in any way.
So this is another
initially.
way.
And he's not ahead. Right. Yeah. Let him.
So
he probably can.
In the 3D, because I'm the one that tuned into the 3D realm more. And again, she's in the 5D more than I am. Even down to the point where our spirit guides, she is in perfect harmony with them. She communicates with them, and I feel them, but I don't have the same communication that she has. So being tuned on this side, I don't get all the freedom, because I hear a lot of our twins that come to us talk about some of the, even those that have been in unity and stuff, and they're like, well, I don't feel the same things that this one does or that one does. That's okay. Because and I always end up asking them, when they say something to you or say that they've been in contact with them, do you question it? Or do you automatically know it? I automatically know anything that she decides to download from our spirit team. And it isn't that I take it with, oh, I'm just going to follow it. Like a preacher would tell you something and you just count on that preacher be telling you everything and you're not going to go out and find it. Exactly, right? That's not what I mean. It's just I actually know. It's like, oh yeah, I already knew that. I mean, there's been subjects that we've talked about that we've never even remotely came close to, but once she's interpreted it, boom, it's in me. It's like,
vice versa.
I knew that already. How did I know that already? And again, it's being opened up as you experience it together. She's in constant communication with our spirit team, and it just flows through her to me. And, and sometimes I'm able to interpret things a little different to someone on the other side of the phone that we're talking to, right? Because I'm coming at it at a different angle, where she's coming from the spirit side, I'm coming from the 3D side. And once you hear it all together, it's like, a plug-in being chained together, and it's just like, and the flow of information is seamless.
Yeah. And we were talking offline too about the physical ailments, right? Mm-hmm. And mirroring that aspect. I mean, their mirrors are consistent. They're not just with like triggers or things that you have to work on. It's like consistently, you are constantly, it doesn't even matter if you're in the same room, mirroring each other. And the recognition of that through the experience has been really fascinating. Yeah. It's constant.
It's quantum. It really is. I keep using that word, quantum, but it really is. It's the existence. That's what we are. It's like the two existences of the molecule. That's the quantum molecule that's entangled, right? And that's just sort of, and what it might take him, he might arrive at an understanding sooner than me and say that, and it'll plug it in, and I no longer have to meet that gap. So where we would have been ahead and behind before, and I would have been trying to play catch up, wherever we are at in union and with that quantum entanglement, it's like it happens instantaneously now. So it really doesn't feel like there's ever any, to me, ever any ahead or behind. But I acknowledge that it is where we have been in the past, and that lots of people feel that.
Yeah.
Would I like Metatron to talk to me and tell me everything? Yes, I would enjoy that. But I can't. Really cool. I don't experience.
Tell
but
me
she,
what it's like.
Yeah.
Okay.
She experiences it, right? So,
This is an actual important I will keep it short, but Metatron he alludes to. So when I was 7 years old and my family was at Lake Powell, this man came down. I was sleeping on the deck outside. My parents were in the cuddy cabin, and I saw the star, and the star came down, and this man was riding on the star, standing on it, and he landed on the shore because we were anchored in a shallow sandbar. And I got out of the boat and I walked up because he wanted me to come talk to him. And he introduced himself as Enoch, and he told me the story of his life. And now remember, to me, this was all very real. I mean, it was real. It truly was real. This happened to me.
No religious background.
No religious background.
Bible
He told me the
history.
story of his life, and he said, you're going to be like me. I walked out of this life, and he said, and I record all these important events, and I can communicate with people, and I tell them I see things, and I am... He said this phrase, the word of God. And I was like, that's weird. You know, people at school talk about God, but I don't know what God is. And he told me this whole story. He said, you're going to be like me and you're going to kind of follow my path. And I want you to know I'm always here for you. And I will always be part of your path. And if you ever need me, you can just call on me. And I went and I climbed back in them. You know, he like hugged me and he took off on his star, and I went and got back in the boat. And the next morning I told my dad about it. And my dad was freaking furious. Shelly, don't you ever talk about that kind of stuff again. That wasn't real. You were dreaming, and don't ever tell anyone things like that. Keep it to yourself. And so me, right? Whoop, lock the key, throw it away. But what I found out one of the times when we were lying in bed together, and I don't even know how we got on the subject, and I told Justin this story. Because he was opening up to me about his Jehovah's Witness background. This is when we were in separation, having our affair before we ever really knew. I think by this point, maybe I'd looked up, I knew what twin flames were, but I also knew I could never broach it with him. So it was in that funny period where I was ahead, right? If you want to apply that moniker, right?
That's what I was saying is early on, not necessarily
I was
anymore.
ahead, right? But this is a very clear example. But here's how he was ahead of me. I told him the story, and he looks at me and he goes, Enoch is a man from the Bible. And he told me the Bible story. And you were like, Enoch? Because I say it differently than you
Enoch
do.
is Jehovah's Witnesses on the West Coast. We all say Enoch, and on the East Coast, everyone says Enoch, even in Jehovah's Witnesses. So, it never dawned on me until, after she is like saying who it was. And I was like, oh, she's talking about Enoch. And
he told me the story. And so I don't know, he was ahead of me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I had made the connection because I would hear from Metatron, and Metatron would tell me stuff, and he'd talk about when he came to me when I was little, and I never quite had that key until Justin told me the Bible story, and all of a sudden it unlocked, and I was like, oh my gosh, you have those moments, right? And you see all the little bricks in the yellow brick road behind you, and you're like, that's how I got here. Yep. And he had the rest of the key to remind me that Enoch became Metatron. They are one, right? And they walked out of this world without ever dying a mortal death. So anyway, all stuff that I couldn't have known. I never went to church a day in my life.
He's your missing piece.
Right.
And vice versa. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 You unlock it for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's see. Did we cover everything? I feel like we did.
We covered so much.
I was going to talk about like your relationship. Do you feel like you can heal each other?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All the time.
We do every day.
We've had some real experiences with that. There was one time I was having a Christmas party for the store that I worked at. I was the store manager, so I was in charge of making sure to feed the team in December, and she got sick. We were at Red Robin, and we ordered what was that, strawberry lemonade?
Red Robin again. We ordered
Red Robin just keeps coming up.
That was supposed to have raspberry sauce with it, but they accidentally...
It must have been strawberries.
They accidentally brought strawberry.
Yeah, and I
tasted it.
She automatically got sick, like bad. I mean, she started like... Obviously, was having an allergic reaction to it and stuff, and she's like, we were trying to find Benadryl, we were trying to find all kinds of stuff, but then we ended up having to go to the hospital, to the emergency room, and I remember on the bed, she was laying in the bed, my hands were on her, and I don't know. I was able to take her sickness away. The problem was it transferred out of her and into me, and all of a sudden I was feeling sick from it, and she was getting better. And so physical healing is able to be done between us both, besides, whatever spiritual healing that we've also gone through, but even experiencing the spiritual side of things or experiencing the physical where I could actually feel that. And instantly what comes to mind when I was doing it at that time, and, I don't want to sound blasphemous to anybody, but it almost felt like what Jesus would have done and what he felt when he took disease out of somebody, right? Like the Bible explains and stuff. And that's what it felt like totally, that sickness was taken out of her, and me being healthier and not being, to be allergic to that stuff. I was able to take that in
and
feel the sickness, but then was able to expel it. Yep, exactly. And so it didn't harm me, but I was able to take her sickness out, and she was able to feel it leaving her body when I was doing it. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I don't know.
It was I said, "What are you doing?" It was like that kiss, right? I was like, "What are you doing?" And he said, I'm taking it away from you. Or he mumbled something. And I was like, I'm feeling better, so I'm just going to be quiet, right? By this point, we'd been in union for a while, and I kind of knew, well, I better just shut up because he's doing something, right? And I felt better, and I was like, well, we need to leave. And he's like, well, we can't now. You're like here. And it was crazy. It was crazy. I said, what did you do with it? And he said, I cast it away or something like that. And it was not even on purpose. It just happened to us almost.
Yeah.
I remember that moment. But yeah, we do physically. And every day when he'd come home from work, that's what I would do, is I'd put my hands on his head, because he'd come home and I see the stuff, attached to him that's not right and doesn't belong there. And I let it come to me, and I
pull it out of his aura.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Does it feel like something's out of place when the two of you are apart?
Feels like something's missing.
It just doesn't feel right.
No.
We act and think and talk as one organism now. It sounds weird and it sounds hokey, I know, to some people.
Or psychologically, people might say it's codependent.
And it's not, because his emotions, I feel them, but I recognize them and I separate them. I don't let them color my experience. Or if they do, I know there's a trigger going on that we need to clear up. And so it's a healthy kind of, it's not codependence, it's symbiosis. It's total balance and symbiosis within this system, where if he's away, what it feels like to me when he's not with me is that I'm only getting half the picture. And I realized that I lived 39 years of my life only getting half the picture. And now for the last 8, I get the full picture. And so when you take away my other antenna that I'm now fully attuned and in total congruence with, everything goes wonky, right? It goes out of, it shifts. It's like when the old tube TVs, right? And the tubes would get knocked and you'd see the red, green, and blue shadows of something, right? And then he comes back in and we get back in that tune and it's all back together.
I love the visual. How do you stay energetically, mentally, and emotionally together?
It feels so good.
It's not even a thought anymore.
Right.
Right.
It's only what we want. It's only what we are. It's like, this is this is where we belong. Anything that goes knocked out of tune.
And no one wants to hear that, because it's like, nah, I can't feel that. I don't feel it. How can you? That's not real. And again, it's something that you have to experience to know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
It took practice. It takes a conscious effort, dealing with the triggers, but it's the preferred state. So we're always in it. Now it's the default state.
Well, who wants to leave home? Home is always nice, right?
Heart.
And it's funny because, a lot of people associate home as being a physical place where you go and live, or that's where you spend your time and you call home. Home to me is totally different now. Home is only when I'm with my twin. And so that means our home can be anywhere. It doesn't matter if we're both together. There's no thought of would we ever take a trip separate from each other? No.
We don't even like to do grocery shopping separately.
No.
Okay.
I mean, because of that.
You do everything together for the most part?
So yeah, I mean,
lately, it's not even a preferred thing. It's not even a preferred thing. I hate that because again, that's putting into people's minds that you have to keep this thing together. So you're forcing it, and it's not. Like I always bring up, did I ever do a dish before I met Michelle? Probably. If I absolutely had to do dishes, I would do dishes. Now we do it together.
Because then we're together.
Yeah. It's not even a thought. It just happens.
And he washes the dish and he holds it out and he doesn't look at me and I don't look at him. I'm doing what I'm doing and I take the dish and it's literally a dance or vice versa. Whatever.
Yeah,
I'm just using an example.
Doing washing the dish.
It's that we're together and we do it
without question.
Together.
And there's not like, there's no... why am I the only one in this kitchen doing this?
Okay, if he's tired, I'll get up and I'll go do the dishes. And it's okay with me because I want him to rest, because I want him to feel good.
And I'm like, oh, man, I got to get up.
And then he gets up and does the dishes because he'd rather be with me.
Not because I want to. It's because it's like, I have to be there. It's weird. It's nothing that I've ever, again, going back to your experiences in the past, I would have avoided that like cancer, man. Having to cook or do any of that stuff, do the laundry, all that. We share in that too. It's funny. It's
my gosh, when we go down now, okay, so trash goes out on Wednesday nights. And I don't care. Let me set the stage here. Neither of us cares. We just want the chore to get done.
Right.
But we'll both... Okay, I'll take the upstairs and get those trashes while he's getting the ones on this level. And then we'll go down together. It's literally a 90-second chore, right? This whole thing. But we just move. We don't talk about it or anything. We just move and do it as one because it feels right.
Well, it's because it's a big concert, right?
It's
a musical thing that just flows. It's like nonstop. It's just,
the song.
If you were listening to a piano, it never stops. That's kind of what it's like.
Okay, so has there been a greatest lesson through this entire process that you would like to share?
I would say for my half, that love is real. And it is a motivator, and it is why I'm doing what I'm doing, even though I never realized that it existed for so many years. And the love had to be shown to me through the mirror of my twin flame, that whole universe thing, and seeing it in his eyes and seeing the universe reflected in him, realizing that we needed to be one in a greater service of love to all of humanity, which is all part of the same source. And we're all here to learn lessons together. Sort of like the collective, right? I have love now for not only myself at root, which was shown to me through him, but for every person I meet all the time. I love you, even when you're like being a jerk to me on the road. It's okay. I get mad. I have my little ego things come up, but ultimately I'm like, that person feels this need to act that way. And so all I can do is make space for it ultimately, not fight it. Right. And so that was the lesson for me, is seeing and feeling, and actually now learning to be love. And people can't resist this. They come up to us and talk to us in the weirdest, and they feel, because we're just home and open, and they're like, well, I want to be where that vibration is. And they'll come up and just start telling us stories. I think everybody who goes through an awakening has a period of that happen to them. But when we're twin flames like this,
it's constant.
It is. And it's like, it's just so inviting to people because we've figured that part of it out, and we can make space for whatever they are. And that's, for me, that was like if I had to articulate it, that's kind of been my lesson, to come from a place where I had so much, but no love. I didn't feel love, but I had so much material stuff to where
me too.
I'm all about love now, and it's really just about love. And we're trying to, part of our 3-year goal is to size down to live in an RV and be mobile so we can go wherever we want, to be with the people who matter to us, that we want to share this, that we are sharing this mission with, right? So that sounds kind of like, I don't know, my kids always call me a hippie. They're like, Mom, you're such a hippie, stop it. And yeah, but that's really for me, that lesson.
Yeah, I think my biggest lesson was coming to the realization of being able to identify that I needed to show myself love, because I came up in such a family that was all about serving others, and that's all you did. You took care of this, you took care of that, but you didn't take care of yourself. You put yourself last. If you had time for yourself, you would get to yourself, but you need to be out there in a service to everyone, which is great. I'm not taking that away from anybody. That's their life mission, is to serve others. But if they're not loving themselves, how can they serve and love others? You can't. And that was the biggest lesson. Everybody that comes in contact with us, I always mention it's the self-love. If you cannot love yourself, you can never love anyone else. So if you're doing service for others, not with love, because you're not loving yourself, that's almost worthless service that you're giving, right? Because you all you're doing it for is to make yourself feel good.
You're depleting yourself and giving to them, and it's a negative
You're wanting
sum.
to show them that you've got all the love for them.
You're abandoning yourself.
Right,
Exactly.
precisely.
Consistently abandoning yourself.
Yeah.
And you had some of that, right?
Oh,
in
yeah.
your life. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I had to, I actively hated myself. I had models around me who showed me to hate myself, and I wasn't taught to share and give the way that he was, but we both had to come to the self-love through the different lenses.
And I think also understanding that I'm an empath, not knowing that before, probably half or more than my grief has all been because of others and not from me directly, right? It was me tuning into everyone else's crap or whatever else is going on in their life. But I was getting mixed up saying, why do I feel like this? I'm not the one affecting it, but I must be, because I feel awful, and I could not figure out the separation and stuff. So that was the other big step, was identifying, okay, whose crap is that? And what crap is mine that I need to fix, right? And understanding that.
Yeah. Having good boundaries.
Exactly. Yeah. And I still let that today
self-love.
in the third wheel. Exactly. Right.
Exactly. Boundaries are self-love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we both really had to learn boundaries.
Yes. Probably even with each other.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel that we can incorporate more love for ourselves and for the world around us?
What we've just been talking about. Learn to look at yourself and accept all of the warts, and just know that you're amazing for even being here. To go back what Andrea shared earlier about, I'm special. You are special. Love that specialness of yourself, which includes everything, every extra ounce of fat here and the gray hair there and the, oh no, I spoke too sharply to my mom on the phone this morning. That's okay. It's all okay. And love yourself, because you're not, nobody's perfect ever. We're all in a constant state of evolution. I don't know. That was what I would say. So love.
Yep. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
I said, how do you
wanna make
feel
sure.
that we can incorporate more love for ourselves and the world around us?
Being accepted of each other is a huge thing. And that's what we see in today. Because if we're loving ourselves, then we should be loving others too. And if we have time to nitpick someone else's lives, then we haven't concentrated enough on our own, because we've got enough damaging stuff to take care of in our own lives than to be shunning it or putting it in other people's faces or pushing yours out of the way to make another person feel good by supporting them, instead of, showing true love and acceptance and getting rid of the judgment. That's the hugest thing I can think of. I think that's the most damaging thing that we can do to each other, is sit there and judge each other, when we know if we took a look at our own selves and dug deep and dug out everything, we have plenty to judge about ourselves than we do any other human or any animal, anything that's out there that's treating you wrong or bad. It's us that we need to focus on. And I think as we continue to show ourselves love, how can we not pass that on to others and be that beacon of light for them with love? And I think that's really the message that all our great prophets in the past have always talked about. It's always been about one thing, and it's love. love, love, love. That's the number one thing talked about, right? And it's so true now to look at it, you know. Sometimes people hear that and they're just like, oh, you're just using that word. And, you know, and love can mean so many things in the English language and blah, blah, blah. It can stand for this or that. And it's like, no, the true aspect of love, of just letting go of everything and being accepting of anything and everything that comes from the universe to us, be accepting of it, you know? Don't be afraid.
Everything.
Exactly.
Yes.
Loving everything.
You picked such a good name for your podcast series.
It's not a coincidence, is it?
No coincidences at all. Only synchronicities.
No.
Yeah.
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 Thank you so much for everything that you shared.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah. As you
We
can
didn't get
tell,
to hear any of your story.
I know.
We have plenty to say.
We can talk about it. We can talk about it when we finish up here. But yeah, thank you so much.